Henry Ford, industrialist and founder of the Ford Motor Company, once said, "Employers only handle the money. It is the customer that pays the wages." There are many subtle ways to interpret that, starting with the straightforward fact that customers are the ones who purchase products and services, and therefore who provide the income required to pay bills, to pay wages, and indeed for the company to survive. In the simplest of terms, someone could sell something to a customer, and there would be no need to know anything about the customer. There would be no need to keep records of the transaction or even to be able to report on such transactions. That, however, is not the reality of the world in which you do business. In order to succeed, what you need to know is how to add customers, how to configure custom fields, how to add jobs for customers, how to monitor customer activity, and how to manage your leads. The simple fact is that without customers, there is no business. That part is simple, and there is no argument really about it. Customers generally do not just appear. Businesses find leads through any variety of methods, including marketing campaigns and personal networking. Those leads, or at least a percentage of them, will hopefully need to be converted into customers. In order to transition leads into customers, and in order to keep customers satisfied, accurate information must be available, not only upon which we can base our efforts, but also with which we can address customer concerns or inquiries. This is the basis for exceptional customer service. These days, a lot of competition means that the product alone may not be enough. It's often the combination of a good product with good service that wins and retains customers. Now, you very well know that it's always preferable to have repeat customers. For some businesses, it's easier to manage a customer over time by grouping sets of transactions into jobs. Jobs allow clearly defined expectations and timelines to be applied and analysis carried out for specific transactions that are done, instead of having a single open-ended kind of relationship that could go on for years. Some businesses easily recognize the need for jobs. For others, jobs just aren't appropriate. If jobs are desired and necessary, it's important to know how to correctly create them and monitor their status. Business does not occur in a bubble, though. There are a variety of entities outside the business and customers who require documentation of business transactions. Beyond the legal requirements, which we always need to be concerned about, the ability to quickly and accurately review customer information as it relates to contact information, transaction history, outstanding balances, unfulfilled sales orders, and even personal notations about the customer should all be an integral part of business records and business practices. You also want to establish a long-term relationship with your customers, and to do so, you must be able to track their interactions with you. This enables you to market more effectively, to make sales more easily, and to simply provide the customer service that your customers both expect and deserve. While QuickBooks does not help you create or carry out marketing campaigns and does not tell you how to provide good customer service, it does allow you to maintain quality information about your customers and their transactions, and that can be used for all of the other things that you need. That is why customers and the maintenance of information about them and their transactions is such an important part of any business. Like products and vendors, the other critical ingredient to the business recipe, the third ingredient, is customers. Customers must also be added to the company file before we can sell to them. Because QuickBooks keeps activities as consistent as possible, there are really no surprises when it comes to adding customers, especially if you've already worked with products or vendors. We'll be adding a customer using the form, and we're going to do that by accessing the customer's menu. Now, what we notice from the customer's menu, as well as from the home page, there is no direct link that says just add a customer. Instead, we're going to access the Customer Center, and we'll go ahead and maximize that window so we can see as much as possible. And then from here, the first option in the upper left-hand corner gives us the ability to select New Customer. Notice that there are 4 categories of information along the left-hand side. It opens by default to the address info, but there's also payment settings, sales tax settings, and additional info. You may have noticed that technically there is another tab. This is for job info, and I suppose it is directly related to the customer, but it's not really directly about the customer. We'll talk about the job info tab in another topic. So let's get started with something as simple as the customer name. You may be thinking, well, what do we need to know about that? Not a whole lot, except that they need to be easy to differentiate and identify, and they must be unique for each customer. There cannot be any duplicates for customer name. Try using a naming convention here to be consistent. For example, it's always a good idea here to remove all spaces and punctuation, like apostrophes or commas, and also remove words like the or a from the beginning of the names. For individuals, you can use their last name, then their first name or initial, which will make them easier to identify and find in alphabetical lists. This is more like a code than anything else, and so we need to make it short and succinct and unique. We're going to create a customer record for an individual whose last name is Aitchen, Aaichen. So we might create a customer name something like this. That should definitely be enough to get us started. But here's something else to remember, and that is that we cannot use the same records for both a customer and a vendor. I know it's one of those things that really bothers a lot of us, but it just is the way that it is. We have to have separate records for a customer and a vendor, even if technically they're the same person or the same company. Because the customer name cannot be duplicated, we have to get a little bit more creative here. For example, if we had Infinite Skills as both a customer and a vendor, maybe the code would be Infinite Skills underscore C for customer and then underscore V for the vendor. Just an idea, but something has to be unique for each of those records. Next, QuickBooks is really good about putting opening balance right where we can't miss it. But the recommendation and best practice is to not enter an opening balance here. If a customer currently owes money and we're just entering them into the system, we actually would be better to generate backdated invoices. That way, we have documentation to refer to, as well as invoices to apply payments to. If we simply enter an opening balance and our customer wants to know what it's for, we would have to go through some other process to try to find out what that was. Now, when it comes down to the company name, this is the part that's going to be displayed on all of the forms, like invoices and statements that we create. So this is the one that we want to type grammatically correct with spacing and capital letters and make it easy to read. We are not going to go through all of the different pieces of information here, but know that everything that we put in will be reproduced on business forms. So it's important to have it both complete as well as accurate. There's a variety of different types of contact fields, including a lot of social media options like LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. These are important to fill in, but perhaps one of the most important is a company website. Using the website, we can not only find additional contact information, but also research our customer and find out a little bit more about them so that we can make sales that meet their needs. When we look at the bottom left of the screen, we see that QuickBooks has started to fill in the first invoice or bill to address. And currently, it only has one name. Since this is James and he's an individual, that might be okay. But for a company, we need to remember that it's important to also include a second piece of information, and that is the full name. For a company, the company name would have been up above, and the name of the primary contact would have been under full name. This would allow the addresses to be complete, and that way invoices don't bump around waiting for somebody to figure out who they actually belong to. When it comes to filling out addresses, we want to be complete. The most important is the invoice or bill to. That should be as complete as possible, although these days, if we only work with a customer via email and we don't actually physically need to deliver anything, then I suppose not having a complete address might be okay. It's always okay not to include a ship to if we don't actually ship anything. But if we do and we want to copy the address, we can simply use the copy button that's between these two fields. If we need to add even more addresses, we can use the plus sign, and this would be perfect if a company had multiple locations. That's about all there is for this initial address info tab, and it's probably the most important. Some people might think the payment settings, though, are just as important. And what we have the ability to do here is to put in their account number with us, as well as designate their payment terms. Payment terms, of course, are more than just reminders for our customers. They have functionality behind the scenes, like calculating the due dates, as well as any available discounts. If we leave this blank, we'll have to designate it every time that we work with a client. It's a good practice to decide on a default, and then if we need to change it for a particular transaction, we can do so. We also can designate the preferred delivery method. And you'll notice that there are three options: email, mail, and none. If we select email, that will apply for all of our forms from invoices to statements, and that usually is the choice these days. QuickBooks e-invoicing is the latest iteration of their online payment service. It requires a subscription and replaces the online payment service that has been offered in the past. If we want to email invoices and receive payments electronically, we will need to subscribe to this service. Mail is also a paid service using QuickBooks Billing Solutions. If we actually want to send traditional snail mail ourselves, we'll need to select None. That's our best option. And then, of course, we have to remember to process those manually. We cannot modify the options here. We can't add our own. They are what they are, and we have to select one of the three. If we choose the mail option, it will require us to set up the service. While it's critical that we be able to communicate with our customers, it's even more critical that we can get paid. And that's where the preferred payment method comes in. These are customizable, but they come out of the box with cash, check, a few different credit cards, and even an e-check. This customer may prefer to pay with a Visa. Now we get into an area that's a little more tricky, and that is credit card information. We can see that QuickBooks provides the opportunity to store a credit card number, as well as an expiration date, the name on the card, the full address, but nothing more. If we're going to store credit card information, we'd better be absolutely sure that our network and our QuickBooks file have proper security and permissions applied to them. There's a service available via QuickBooks to assist us with credit card security, though. It's called the Customer Credit Card Protection feature, and it can be enabled from the company menu. It's a simple checkbox, but without going into a lot of technical details, QuickBooks will help us comply with credit card security requirements. And yes, they are requirements. This includes things like not being able to store the security code that's on the physical card. We can see at the bottom that it says, "Can I save the card security code?" And that will tell you why you can't. It's a violation of security policies. In addition, it requires any QuickBooks user who can view the complete credit card information to have also created a complex or strong password to access the QuickBooks file. We cover users and passwords as well as permissions in our chapter on setting up security and preferences. So if we choose to store this information, we can do so. But QuickBooks only allows us to store one credit card, and we have to follow the rules. Before we leave this tab, don't overlook that on the upper right corner, we can enter a credit limit, as well as any pricing levels that we've established for QuickBooks. Again, going over to the left-hand side, we have sales tax. Sales tax. This is one of the most challenging of topics in QuickBooks. Because of its complexity and really lack of any consistency across products and services, geographic locations, and methods of sales, by which I mean physical versus online, it is really complex. This is where we would designate if a customer should be charged sales tax, and if so, which one. So we can see the options are either to be taxable or non-taxable, and then any variety of tax items that have already been set up in QuickBooks. We cover this in detail in our entire chapter on sales tax. Last but not least, we have the additional info tab. Here we can put in different customer types if we are tracking customer types, and even designate the representative for this particular customer. On the right-hand side of this screen, we see custom fields, which have their very own topic. And with that, we've worked through the customer setup process. We all know that customers are special, but as far as QuickBooks is concerned, they're really nothing special. Instead, they're just like vendors and products and even employees as far as the logistics of adding them to the company file goes. While there are some fields that are specific to customers that should be given proper attention, the process itself is a straightforward one. With that, we'll click OK, and our customer is ready to use.